you need clothing-wise before you go to school.
Nice.
Which is really sweet. Had I had a wealthy person to guide me through how to spend that money. Because I spent over $400 at Forever 21, and I own literally none of those clothes anymore. Like, had I gone to a J. Crew, to a Banana Republic, like anything that just sells basics in a nice version, I would still own that shit. But I do not. I went, oh my god, I wish I could show pictures of what I bought. I bought a jumper dress, so keep in mind, it has straps that come forward and button in the front in a bib.
It.
And it was cream colored with geometric navy blue and orange squares all over it. Yes. I bought several, you know how Forever 21 sells those, I'm putting quote fingers, knee-length dresses that, like, fit right below your ass. I bought so many dresses that look like baby doll dresses. I could never wear them. They're right under my butt. A lot of things that fell apart immediately. A lot of things that showed my whole boob once they stretched out. I own two dresses from that $1,000 that I got at Urban Outfitters. And that's
so
all.
Funny. I wish I could tell you where any of the $1,000 that my father ever gave me went to, but only a small amount of it paid for credit cards, and then it didn't. And then I was like, I'm out of here, party on. Yeah. I had speaking of, like, I was sort of ill-using $1,000. So when I first moved to New York City, it was because I got a job there through a friend of mine, and my job was stage manager at NYU for the third-year Tisch students. Mm-hmm. So, like, I essentially was just the stage manager of their show, and so I spent all day just sitting there with a notebook, like, writing shit down, whatever. Stage managery stuff. And I got paid once at the beginning of the gig and then once at the end. And it was like two of the same. It was like lump sum 50%, lump sum 50%. And I don't know how I did this, but I got the money at the beginning, and then I had to live off that money for the entirety of the job. And the job was like 5-6 months. And so I had to live 6 months off of money I received on one day. Mm. And I'm a child, so I have a bank account somewhere. And when they were like, hey, would you like an overdraft account? I was like, yeah, I would. Of course, that's what I want. And so I proceeded to never balance a checkbook or look at a bank account. It wasn't really internet time yet. I mean, the internet I think existed, but it wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't like it is. And I wouldn't have like checked my bank online. Anyway, I ended up spending all of the money that I had very quickly, and then spent all of the $1,000 overdraft that they gave me. Essentially, every time I used my card, it just rang like a credit card, and it would just go on the overdraft account. So by the time I received the other half of whatever I was making, I had spent so much overdraft that when it went in, I ended up having like $50. And I was like, what? What is this? I thought I had the same amount that I've been living off of. And then I like went to the bank and was like, what's happening? And they like legitimately had to show me what I had done. Like they were like, crazy. You didn't keep track of your money at all. So at a certain point you had spent all the money you had, and then it went into your overdraft. So when you gave us the money back, we covered the overdraft. Yeah. And then you only had 50 left. And I was like, no, thankfully I paid off that overdraft because great, I don't ever have to pay that again. But at the same time I was like, I need more than $50.
Wow, that's crazy.
That was one of the many times I had to leave New York City because I'd run out of money. That was my early 20s when I would go home to Boston all the time because I had failed. Now I just wing it because I'm too far away. I think that's why I moved far away, was to force myself to deal with it.
Yeah.
Where are you originally from?
Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
Georgia.
Hot Atlanta.
That way?
Are you, given the fact that Atlanta is like such a big, huge film town, how much are you considering like moving back there at any point?
I think if I were to move somewhere, like if I think about moving at all, I only think about moving to either Atlanta or Chicago. And I went to Atlanta for 2 weeks in June. And I had a great time doing comedy, and I really liked their comedians, and I like the cities like Austin, you know, like it's grown so much since I left. So I would definitely consider moving back, but I'm not planning on it anytime soon, just because it takes so long to build social networks, and I have a really strong one here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you'd want to, I guess, go when you have a little bit more going, or like an agent, or like an whatever sort of resume if you wanted to go into film, whatever that might be.
I think I'll end up moving back to Atlanta if my parents are unwell, which my dad already is, so it's like if my mom were to be sick or something, I'd probably move back. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I hear ya. My uncle, who he's my godfather, he lives in LA and he's an actor, and he said a lot of his friends are just up and leaving LA. Like, he's in his 50s. Sorry, Uncle Joey. And so all of his actor friends are in their 50s, and some of them have been just sort of like, day players on Law and Order forever, or doing different, side characters here and there, and they're like, God, I really need to work more. Yeah. And so a bunch of them are just going and spending 3 months in Atlanta to see if they can make a place for themselves. And
everyone I know who's like a professional actor is spending a lot of time in Atlanta right now. So and I've been watching a lot of shows that I'm like, oh, this is filmed in Atlanta. I didn't realize.
Interesting.
Well, it's funny because that show Constantine it was shot in Atlanta, and it's so funny because after I moved here and started getting into acting, all of a sudden there are all these Atlanta casting calls for all these shows because Atlanta's a big city. When you're standing in it, when you're looking up, it looks huge, right?
Yeah, it's a bigger metroplex than Austin is for sure. The metroplex is insane. The city of Atlanta is not actually crazy big, but
metroplex is the downtown corporate area.
No, I mean I say I'm from Atlanta. I'm from Lawrenceville, Georgia, right. And you can drive 40 minutes outside of Atlanta and not leave a very densely populated urban area. So the urban area of Atlanta has 9 million people in it.
Right.
But the city of Atlanta actually has a surprisingly low number of people. It's under 1 million people.
Oh.
It's because of the way the lines are drawn.
Right on. I hear that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I lived in Dallas for a little while, and they call the Metroplex Dallas and Fort Worth and all the towns up and down and in between. So it's that's about 20 cities.
Yeah.
I guess that's a thing.
It includes 3 of the most populated cities in America.
Oh, wow. So that's interesting. That's a good... I wish that my, going home backup plan were something as great as Atlanta, truly. I will never go back to Boston.
Is your family still in Boston?
Yeah. My mom and my sister and my aunts all live in Boston. And my Uncle Joey lives in L.A., so that's a good backup. I can just go live with Uncle Joey. I've also thought about just going and spending a couple weeks with him because he's great, and I don't see him very often. But it's hey, he's in L.A. I never want to go to Boston again, but...
my brother just moved to Boston. I've never been. I'd like to go visit him.
Oh, yeah, visit.
Yeah.
Have a lovely visit. Don't
never move
there. I mean, unless you're you know what I love? Hostility. You know what else I love even more? Excessive cold. So, if you like excessive cold and hostility, go. You're going to love it. Oh, my God. It's so much fun.
At some point, Delia just stopped talking and started making saucy facial expressions instead.
That's what Delia does. She makes saucy facial expressions.
She's trying to throw you off your game. That's how.
Yeah, nobody can see her facial expressions on the audio, so she's trying to be let's see how she reacts. Pretty soon she's have I told everyone how much I love Delia? Oh my God, she's so gorgeous. And then she gets what she's been trying to get all night.
Never mind, I won't talk about how hot Delia is for too long.
Don't.
I definitely think Delia is a very attractive lady.
If I were gay, I'd be so into Delia. Fortunately, I'm as straight as an arrow, so she can't break my heart.
Whenever I see Delia in a video
you guys
online,
are right here. It's uncomfortable.
Whenever I see... We're pulling a Pat Dean and we're talking about Delia right in front of her. Hey. Whenever I see Delia in a video and she's just saying stuff or doing comedy because she's funny and that's what she's doing, I'm all oh my God, I would watch this show with this girl in it. This girl's the kind of girl I'd watch on a TV show all the time, and I'd be all I get it, I'm just like her. Look at how cute she is. I'd watch that show
we're in a troupe together that does the living room, which for people who don't listen is a conversation that you do improv based on, and our coach keeps having to tell me and Delia to stop talking to each other. He's that was good. Katie and Delia talk to each other a lot.
It's not our fault.
I know. We're delightful.
I think it's that. I think it's that, and just the combination of the way that format is set up is you draw better things from real experiences.
Yeah.
And I love everyone in that troupe, but I think sometimes it gets convoluted by bits.
Yeah.
And for that, it's super difficult because save the bit for this other thing, and like this is where the audience gets to know us individually, and then it's just. Then it just feels like it's being wasted.
Yeah. Well, I do think, and I blame society for the fact that I think, because you and I are, like, asking each other questions, because we're like, I know she'll answer honestly, because women are, like, encouraged to have emotionally honest conversations with each other, whereas I think men, like, absolutely can, and, like, so many men do, and do it well, but, like, if you're with strangers, basically, which we still kind of are to each other, it's like, I don't necessarily want to tell you a real fact about myself, so I'm going to make a joke to deflect that, which can be difficult.
Oh, it's funny. Oh, I'm sorry. I just feel like comedy as a means of, like, not telling stuff about yourself is such a, like, I don't know, I guess opposite of what I imagine this world to be. Yeah. In this world, it's like, how honest can you be? I mean, even earlier telling you that I don't want to tell people what my political beliefs are because I just find it easier not to have to deal with it makes me feel like an old fogey. Like, I'm like, oh, listen, I'll never tell anybody anything. You know, whatever it is.
Keep your secrets to yourself.
But I feel like that's what makes me older, and that will be the sort of like, oh, she's guarded, she's older, you know?
Oh.
And whereas, like, everybody sort of reveals things about themselves, the more bald and, like real, horrifying, true statements I feel about myself, the more reaction I get.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, wow, shit. And so sometimes I feel like comedy is not so much deflecting from these raw wounds, but rather pointing at them and highlighting them and being like, did you see this raw wound I have? Oh my god!
Oh my god!
Dripping.
I am such a
I
raw
want to put
wound.
worms in it. Yeah, no, I know. But that's a slippery slope, right? You know, it's like you're gonna hit. Sometimes you hit that point, and it's everybody's like, oh, that changes the dynamic of our relationship for the rest of our lives. You know?
Yeah, no, I relate to that very hard.
You mean like sharing certain things about yourself?
Yeah, because like I always felt like transparency was a good thing in the sense of like just being you and like, but sometimes there's just you that people like. There's just things people don't need to know.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, also, sorry.
No, say what you're gonna say.
Well, I think something that because I've been doing this like comedic blog project this summer, and other. Like, your personal life necessarily involves other people, right? And there have been 3 different people who I had to address with them, like, their involvement in my personal story and how I was portraying that publicly. And it's like, each of those was, like, a completely different story and, like, handled it completely differently. And some of them turned out really positively and some of them turned out really negatively. But it's like, how do you share the story of your life? Because you don't exist in a void without involving the other people in your life.
Yeah.
Which is kind of scary. And, like, a friend of mine wrote something about me and, like, sent it to me to read beforehand. I'm like, I should do that. But, things like that, can be tricky and scary and can alter a relationship when you didn't expect it to.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think if you keep your stories, I mean, I found like, for instance, on Facebook, people just sort of put down their beliefs, but have no, like, this didn't happen to them. This is not a thing that they've dealt with. They're just like, well, I really think. And it's like, great, you have no reference point for that in any way. But if a person tells a personal story about something that happened to them and how that shaped who they are, then a person really, truly can't refute anything about it. And in reality, I actually think, this is silly, but I actually think the most American thing to do is let everybody believe whatever they want.
Yeah.
Even if they're the worst assholes in the world. To the point, and this breaks my heart, and I'm going to say it on the podcast because it's a real thing, and it hurts me to think it, but it might be true. I worry that maybe it is Trump's America. That maybe we're the minority. The people who are like, no, shouldn't we be decent to each other? Why? Wait, let's not fight. And instead, the inflammatory people are what America's about.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that just fight about stuff, and we get mad about them fighting, we get bad being involved, but are we the mature ones? Are we potentially the few of people who, like, really, truly can rise above it and say, I'm not going to let this bother me, and I'm not going to put myself out there to have to be dealt with in that way, whereas the inflamed ones are the majority in the country that we live in, and to a certain extent, we have to respect the majority of, because of the nature of the government.